Hey everyone, we're back. It's Kelly at Women for One, and I'm here with Greg Bennick, a team member of Women for One. Greg is a spoken word performer, a lead singer in a punk rock band, and most importantly, he's the lead of the strategy for Women for One and helps me and has been an integral part of what we're doing here in our community. But more importantly, Greg and I are here to talk to Amanda Palmer today. We're very excited to talk to the great Amanda Palmer, which just sounds good when I say it like that.
The great Amanda Palmer.
The great Amanda Palmer. And I would say, in researching more about you, after I found out about you, I feel like first and foremost, you are a teacher to humanity. That's my most important thing I want to say about you to our community. You're a great teacher. Through your music, through your art, and through your speaking your truth.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. That's like the highest compliment someone could give me, actually.
Even
better than good musician.
Yes, no, a teacher. And I learned so much. And when I try to connect with someone, when I'm getting ready to interview them, words come to me. And the three words that came to me about you, the first one was courage. It takes a lot of courage. And power. I feel your power sitting here with you. But I think the most important word that comes to me and what Women for One is about is the movement of the heart. And when you did your TED Talk, The Art of Asking, I moved into my heart so many times during that TED Talk, and I'm assuming you did too, and I'd love to hear your experience of the TED Talk and also what it's about, if you could tell our community.
Oof. The TED Talk came about because I had initially reached out to TED maybe 2 or 3 years before I actually did the talk, because I knew of the existence of TED and I knew it was a really important, far-reaching stage should I wind up on it. And when I initially approached them, I just had a lot to say about the music business, because I had left my label and I was an independent, and I wanted to draw a line between my experience as a street performer, where I feel like I learned a lot about accepting help, and kind of trusting humanity in this ongoing, practical way that I would do my art and my rent would get paid, because I kind of had an understanding with my audience of strangers, and how that translated through my life as a musician and became really useful. Then I crowdfunded a gigantic record, a Kickstarter that made over $1 million, which was all of a sudden headline news.
That's just incredible.
And they, and I think they approached me not even just because the Kickstarter was big, but because I then became embroiled in controversy, and everybody loves a good controversy. And I think that's the point where they reached out to me and said, okay, come talk to us about that. And it was fascinating, because I was in a point in my life when I was invited to TED where I was really, like I was fighting an uphill battle with myself, with the public, with my management, and I had sort of been vaulted into the spotlight because of this huge success and what I had done, and then I had been torn down for not doing it quite right, which is like such a common theme also in feminism. You know, I did it, but
Absolutely.
I didn't get it perfect.
Right, right.
And so the TED Talk was an incredible opportunity, because I feel like I was handed back the mic to explain how I felt I had been misunderstood, and to explain where I was fundamentally coming from, because I had spent all of the months leading up to that just feeling lambasted and worse, misunderstood. Like my intentions misunderstood. And there's kind of nothing worse than your intentions being misunderstood. Someone cannot like your intentions, and someone cannot like you, but it's far worse to have people misunderstand your intentions and then hate you. So the TED thing was really a gift.
Yeah, for you.
For me.
Right.
Because I actually got to stand up and, in front of eventually millions of people, explain my worldview, my heart view, why I do what I do, where it comes from, and then judge. And how lucky, you know, how lucky to get the opportunity to do that. And for that, I'm very thankful.
You did that
to
so
Ted.
fabulously.
Thank you.
I mean, the heart space was so evident. I mean, I was just tearing up through the whole thing. I mean, I encourage all of our community to watch it because it blew me away. And it helped me to understand musicians and artists and humans. And what I loved about what I saw a couple of other interviews from you, and you talked about artists aren't all the same. We're all just people. We're all just humans. Like, there's crazy artists, there's rigid artists, you know, and I loved that because we're just humans. And you were coming from that humanistic perspective of what happened.
Well, there's a real romance around artists.
Right.
That is sometimes really wonderful, and you can take incredible advantage of it, and you have your magic artist wand and your artist cloak, and you know, people give you special passes and you can walk into certain spaces that others can't. But the romance has its flip side, which is you can get trapped in the idea of what everyone else thinks an artist is supposed to be. You know,
and when you start believing it, right?
Well,
your idealized image of an artist.
Yeah,
right?
or you grew up that way. I mean, I definitely had that idealized vision of what an artist is like, how an artist acts, how an artist works even, or doesn't work in the case of, you know, what business do you touch and not touch, and what's, you know, what's profane for an artist to get involved with. And I've learned so much about that even just in the last few years since kickstarting and having to explain myself and really having to own certain things that I haven't had to be vocal about. You know, just in terms of facing my own demons about, you know, well, what do I think an artist is? Why did I think I had any right to or power to do that? And like all of the stories kind of come tumbling out once, especially when you have that collision of art and commerce where everyone feels very uncomfortable. Because art, you know, artists dealing with money is kind of this nasty gray area that no one wants to address because the artists hate it and the public hates it. And you know, stepping up and even just approaching it, like, you get caught in the crossfire.
Right. Well, speaking of artists, what was it like? You recently spoke at the UN and spoke about experiences with other artists, and I watched that too.
Yeah, that was heavy.
It was intense, dark, beautiful, all those words. It was the spectrum. For me, I'm curious if you could talk about your experience and how you got asked to do that. What that was like?
I got asked to do that because the Italian playwright who had been invited to the UN invited 15 women, and I don't know how she found me, but she invited the gamut. It wasn't just it wasn't even just artists. There were activists and writers and performance artists. And, well, there were a lot of artists. There were actresses. There were there was everything. And actually, I mean, if I learned anything from that, it was really intimidating to stand in that space at the UN in front of these ambassadors and think like, okay, I have this little window. And actually, I mean, Ted gave me some good practice, but I have this little window and this is my audience. And I can either affect change or affect no change, but God, like, if I do this fucking right, I might really reach somebody. And in order to do it right, my ego has to just go out the window. I have to not think like, do I look good? Am I coming across as the best performer? But like, am I affecting these people? Even just one of them. And that's a space that will really test you. Because it's not like being in a theater or a club with my fans where, you know, you love me anyway and I'm playing a song that you like or that maybe you don't like, but the stakes are pretty low. And going into the UN, it's like, oh, these are real stakes. I might actually plant a seed that changes a policy or change an opinion or start some domino effect that actually helps someone out there who has no voice.
And I knew I loved you when you said, I'm just going to get out of my way and read it.
Yeah.
I was like, I love her.
It was pretty
Yeah.
ego-free. The whole piece was pretty, I mean, it was pretty bare bones that way, so.
Yeah, well, and that's hard to get to, too, because it's kind of like, you know, you can be a non-performer and just be so covered with self-consciousness because everybody hates public speaking. I mean, there's very few people who do it naturally, especially when you're talking to an audience like that. And then you can get stuck in performance mode too, where you can't escape yourself and how you look and how you're coming across and in ego. And the great performers, no matter what they do, the great musicians, the great actors, the great performers somehow manage to achieve that higher level where they go back to being servants.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, this is actually like, it's really not about you. You're plugging into something way deeper. And those are the performers who blow you away.
Right.
Because they're like a vessel through which, you know, humanity flows, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't feel like they're just speaking at you.
Right.
You feel like something's speaking through them.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are,
The channels, right.
yeah, and those performers are the ones you want to watch.
Okay, so with that in mind,
Speaking of performing.
speaking of performing, speaking of integrity and honesty, when I watched your video for the bed song, I was completely blown away. It was one of those rare times that I sit in front of the internet and actually have a visceral reaction to something. Like in tears, in awe, just confused and clear all at once. So I think that in that moment, and in many other of your moments, you are that next level performer, synthesizer of the human experience. So my question is, how do you fashion a story to tell? And what is the Amanda Palmer story that you are telling? Maybe even just a part of it, as reflected in the bed song. It takes so much attention to human compassion and sensitivity to tell a story that intimate. And I think everyone should watch that video. But it takes so
Yeah.
much sensitivity and awareness.
Well, there's an easy answer to that, I think. And I have to sort of play two roles at once when I'm writing a song like that, which is I'm part songwriter, but I have to stand back and simultaneously be the audience. And I know that a song like that is working if it's affecting me. And that, I think, is just, it's something that you work on as part of your craft. And I'm really affected by my own work. I think I have to be to know if it's working. It's like being a chef tasting the soup. You know, you need to taste it, and if it's too salty, you've fucked up, and you back up and you recalibrate. And I cried writing that song. Because when I got to the fourth verse and sketched out, and I was like, oh, I think this is gonna work. And I went and it was like, oh, Jesus. Yep, that works. And I didn't plan that reaction. And so if something affects me, I assume it will affect others. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, you know, I have my own real personal take on my work, or I know the backstory. But when the bed song's pretty universal, and it's, you know, it can be a song about a lot of things, but the theme is pretty simple. That's a hard song to misinterpret. Yeah. And I still cry often playing that song, usually right in the same spot. And what it is, like whatever combination of physiological ideas and emotions go into like getting me right in the gut when I get to a certain lyric, I don't want to know. It's a great mystery, but I know it works.
You don't need to know sometimes.
I actually don't want to know.
You don't.
Yeah.
Don't actually confront me with the team of scientists who analyzed the lyrics and told me, well, you had 30% of this, and then you brought in this kind of the past, but actually no, like but that's the great thing about art. Art is awesome that way. You don't know. It's pretty strange. You look at a painting, you look at you listen to a symphony, you hear the lyrics of a song, you read a poem, and like many, or you watch a film and observe the audience, and like the point where the tears come is our common experience, and whatever it is that drew it out.
Well, it's so interesting to say that.
But it's, I'm actually happier for it to stay a mystery. Yeah. But, as a songwriter or as the maker of the art, you have to just be tuned into yourself enough to observe, because you're also crafting, like you're sitting there choosing words, writing chords, like as craftsperson, not as, not as emotional airy-fairy, but like you have to figure out the labor of it. And riding that balance between, staying really present and being open to whatever's going to come and going like, oh, that, and a little bit of that, and that. Oh, and whatever that combination is that moves you, you run and you chase it and you lock it.
Yeah. When did you step out of being a listener to music and an experiencer of art into being an artist and a musician and a creator of music?
I didn't really.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I didn't. In fact, I remember banging on a piano before. I remember that preceding listening to the Beatles. Mm-hmm. So I was always making and listening at the same time. I wrote my first bad songs when I was 10, and they were terrible, but
they were songs.
They were songs, and I was writing them, and they had verses and choruses, and it never occurred to me that what I was doing was interesting or special or, whatever. It was just what I wanted to do. Yeah. And from the first time I saw that records existed and songs existed, I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. Clearly I'm going to do that. That's what I want to do. So I just started doing it badly, and I did it badly for a long time until I finally wrote my first good songs when I was maybe 15. And finally had something I was proud of.
We even say and I don't know the name of the song, the ukulele song at the end of the Lincoln set, where you just, you tell people, just pick up an instrument. You don't have to be an artist in order to play music. You don't have to practice every day. I think so.
Well, it may sound cheesy, but I actually believe deeply everyone is artistic.
In their own way. Mm-hmm. I do too.
It manifests differently. I mean, I just talked at Microsoft. And practically teared up there talking about my mother, who's a computer programmer and considers herself deeply artistic, and never got the kind of recognition I get. Her stuff was deeply embedded in programs that transferred one platform to another for a company that needed to hire a freelancer, and no one ever saw the handiwork. You couldn't hang it on a wall.
It's hard to sing along with a program. Yeah, you can't sing along.
But she had to think very, very creatively, and she stayed up late nights and figured out intricate, bizarre fixes to strange problems. And she had an incredibly creative, math bent brain. But artistic is a shady word. It makes it very, very easy for us to stick a bunch of people in a box and say well, they're artists, they do that thing over there, and we're and it drives me crazy when I hear someone go I'm not artistic, that's the artist in the family, and I'm well, but probably bullshit.
Yeah, everybody's artistic.
Yeah, everybody has whatever version. And the saddest thing about it is, as soon as someone disqualifies themselves from club art, and they don't approach their work creatively, and they don't see themselves as an artist, they get further and further away from doing whatever it is they do passionately.
Their passion.
Yeah.
Because they shut down that part of themselves.
Yeah. So hopefully everyone can look at their creativity and how it's applied and recognize it and appreciate it.
That's amazing. And just I'm learning a lot from you just sitting here. And the next question I have is around courage. Because I watched your creativity, your artistry, and what it's taken for you to surrender to your fans, to the people, to asking and making yourself vulnerable, to getting naked and having people write all over you. I was I want to be her. I want to fucking be her.
You don't want to be me.
No, no, but that's what I was thinking. I was how is this woman so powerful and so courageous that they could stand in the midst of what you could see as a lot of people, media, everybody attacking everything they can get their hands on for controversy these days, and still standing strong in herself. And that's really all we're about at Women for One, is learning that strength.
Yeah. Well,
Where'd it come from?
you do yoga.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's the same thing. It's just, literally trying to stay centered, never being fully centered, and just like finding balance wherever you can and getting up when you fall down. It's the same thing. And I had a really rough year. And part of the roughness of my year is the weird simultaneous dance of all these people going like, you're amazing, you're so brave, I wish I were you. You can do anything, you have no fear. And I'm like, bullshit. I spent the last month depressed and like practically unable to get out of bed because I couldn't stand what people were saying about me on the internet, and I felt so attacked and I didn't have any strength left and I just wanted to cry, and some days I did, and I felt unworthy and I felt, misinterpreted.
But you're sitting here saying that. That's the
courage,
right.
I mean, that's the key.
That's the key.
And the key is to actually, I have a great friend who's helped me a lot, and we were talking about actually this exact kind of stuff yesterday. And there is a great quote from the Buddha where he says, you bear your burden like a wagon bears a load. It's not personal. Like, you put a bunch of shit on the wagon,
Yep.
It creaks, it falters, but the wagon is just a wagon. It's just a vessel, like you said. It's just, shit comes on, shit goes off. There's nothing personal about it. And the hardest row to hoe is basically like not taking it all so personally. And my yoga practice and my meditation practice are fantastic tools for that, because there are just so many parallels. And I've learned so much through practicing and just being on the mat and going like, well, am I going to take it personally? My hip isn't doing that today. It's just not.
So that's surrender right there. So
Right.
you're surrendering.
Yeah,
in a
you are
way.
surrendering. And I mean, the other piece of it is trying to stick to a constant regimen of outgoing compassion, particularly for the people who are angry at me, and particularly for the people who attack me. And just watching that desire to like lash out and fight back, and just going, nope, 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 stop, look at them, listen to what they're saying, and try to see the pain and the fear and whatever's coming at you. And then just like try to love them anyway, as angry as they are and as like below the belt as they are hitting. And it's easy to hurt me. Like, I have some real hot spots. But that is just an ongoing practice. I'm just gonna let it pass through me and hope it goes away. And if I'm feeling really, really strong, like reach out and be like, are you okay? And I mean it, like no judgment. What happened to you? And do you want to talk? And what's amazing is I've seen some miraculous things happen when people come at me with their fists, and I just go like, are you all right? And they go, no, I'm not all right. And they collapse on me. And I'm like, okay, actually here we are. So not to make myself sound saintly, I'm not. I fuck up constantly. But on a good day, that's where I stand, and just forgive myself constantly when I don't get it right. Because I never get it right. No one ever gets it right.
I think that the most powerful people in the world are just say what you say. I fuck up. It's who I am.
Absolutely.
I fuck up, and I'm doing the best I can with what
Yeah.
I've been given.
Well, and and that also involves a lot of forgiveness.
Self-forgiveness, yes.
Self-forgiveness, but
And-
also those around you, And I do find it's a great, the back and forth of it, there's a good term, but I'm missing it. There's a synergy where the easier I am on myself, it's directly reflected in how easy I am on those around me, especially because it's so easy to lash out at those close to you. It's very easy to be kind to strangers and, you know, but you know, when the people who are right next to you fuck up, it's really easy to react. And, you know, one informs the other. My husband and I deal with this all the time. You know, we're both crazy busy people, you know, with insane schedules and a lot of demands. And when we're not kind to ourselves, we tend to be bitchy at the other. It's obvious. And then it's like, okay, do we plummet down the cycle of snowball hell, or do we actually, like, does one of us step up and go, let's actually, I'm gonna just let go of everything I was angry about because I need you.
Well, and that's what you did to me when I watched the Bed Song. I was sobbing because in my first marriage, that was the reason I walked away, was that distance. And really did some soul searching about, that was my fear and my distance. And so my greatest fear in my marriage now, my new marriage, is that place, because we're crazy busy. And I mean, literally, I got a comforter a month and a half ago that was separate than my husband's because I'm too hot right now, right?
But and that's legit.
But justified it, right? But justified it. And then I was like, oh shit, I gotta, just what you just said.
Yeah.
I need you, I love you, and I'm just gonna.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's definitely not black and white.
No.
Sometimes I love you is I'm going to be working all night and I'm sleeping in a separate bed.
Oh, me too.
Right.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And it has to allow for everything. And not get caught up in the symbols and not get caught up in the bullshit and the party line. Because it is like whatever works. And then you have to figure out whatever works every day. Because it's not the same as what worked yesterday. It changed. Ha ha. So, you know, that's.
I get it. So you changed my life.
That's like level
right
3
there.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. You changed my life. You know, you're saying if you could change one person's life. I was like, oh God, I gotta go talk to my husband.
Good. Actually, that is the best. That's the best reaction I get from the Bed Song is people come up to me either after shows or on the net and say, I heard that and I crossed the space to the other end of the house and I sat down with my partner and talked to them. And you know, and that's like, wow, music as direct therapy. Yeah, good job.
So before we let you go, I do have a question about women in the world. I just want to hear what your thoughts are on it.
We're fucked. Give up.
Don't say that.
We're fine.
And scene.
Scene. The women of the world, in a lot of places, like for example in the Middle East, I have been absolutely blown away by how powerful and educated these women are.
Yeah.
And we are fed in the Western world that these women are oppressed, which
They're
all victims. They're all victims. So I'm curious if you have any suggestions on how you see the world evolving, where women can move out of that victimhood perceived role, because we're not. I truly believe we're not victims internally, I think. But
no, and we can't see ourselves that way. That's where I actually see that feminism has taken a nasty turn. And if you ask for too much protection, whether it's political correct protection or whatever, protection in whatever form, you are disempowering yourself. And not to say that, you know, we don't need things like, you know, laws. They're handy. But we can't hide too far into the comfort zone of protection because it veers into I'm just a waiting victim, so fuck off. Because you're not. You know, women are so powerful. Like so powerful internally and emotionally and intellectually and in the vast reaches of shit that they can do. And the internet in itself is I mean, there's areas of it that are just so nasty, and it's such a cesspool of negativity and infighting, especially around issues like feminism, especially around issues like, you know, feminists from the Middle East who aren't doing it right.
It's fascinating. I can't believe that.
No, don't get me started.
I'm serious because it's fascinating to listen to that.
But here's where, if you want, you know, where I see a window solution. And you were talking about it before I think the camera even started rolling. I think a lot of the problem is that the stereotype doesn't have a human story and a human being and a face and an actual woman sitting there going like, actually, you've got this all wrong. Let me tell you how it is. Let me tell you how I feel. You know, it's not just statistics. It's not just a woman in a hijab. It's not just this or that. Like, I have a story. It's real. Let me explain it.
Right.
And the internet, for those with access and those brave enough, and in a lot of places you have to be very brave.
Very brave, yes.
To share the story, I think that's where some of the fundamental power is going to come from, because it will cut right through the detached dialogue going on over here, where everyone's just like, well, this, you know, we're all just here talking about these problems and talking about these people as if they're not real. And, you know, yes, someone may be very far away, but through the internet, through new media, their truth, their story, their experience can insert right into there and be like, oh, actually, no, you're all wrong. Let me tell you how it is.
That's what's happened to me with Women for One.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
So those women need two things. They need to be brave enough to share the story, and then they need a medium through which to share it. And it's getting easier and easier with the tools, the internet, phones, Twitter, video, whatever. And we're seeing it start to have an effect, but we're also seeing the backlash against it, because, like, God willing, a giant mass of women on that side of the world all of a sudden have power. Like, that's a nightmare for a lot of people.
It's coming.
I hope.
I feel it.
But, you know, there's some women who are in some particularly evil cages. And, you know, I think the sense over there is like, this can't get out. This will really, really change the paradigm. And, you know, all we can do is like try to empower on their terms. It can't be on our terms. It has to be on their terms. It's not like, okay, all you over there play by our rules will help. It needs to be, will help.
Yeah, let's inject ourselves.
Just will help.
Right.
And being very, very wise about where the help is needed. You know, because otherwise we can really fuck things up, and we don't want to do that.
Right.
It's funny you said that. Greg and I were talking about going over to Cairo because we have some connections there and meeting with the people at American University at Cairo. And we just want to hear them. That's it. We just want to hear where they're struggling, what their stories are, and find out how they need help and how we can support them, not tell them what we think they need to do. You know?
Well, that's where help actually becomes useful, when it listens.
We listen.
And then figure it out. And sometimes just the act of listening can help immensely. You know? Yeah. I've found that.
You found that the act
I have
of
found
listening
that just letting someone speak their truth can sometimes be the biggest gift you can give them. And you just hold the space for them.
You mentioned it in the TED Talk. That's, you know, you mentioned people who might not have talked to anybody for weeks. And that's a pretty critical moment of that little piece, because there are people all around us who might not have had any human contact as we know it for weeks or months, but we take that for granted. So that was another favorite moment of mine in that, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely, it's said that, you know, you were taking those moments as a street performer to hear somebody when they were putting themselves out into the world, or just, you know, whatever it was, putting money in, you know, in a hat or whatever it might have been. In that moment, that was just a little piece of contact, and you were there as the recipient. Even if you didn't do anything else other than receive that, that was probably very powerful for them.
Well, and like you guys are doing a version of it. You're doing a version of it here. Like you can feel like you're in such a position of honor to, you know, to like let someone just make eye contact with you, or share something even remotely intimate, and your job is to just receive it, you know, and that's it. You don't have to congratulate them. You don't have to follow up. You don't have to ask a million questions about it. Sometimes just like, hi, can be so powerful.
Being the witness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and in a world where everyone is now going like a gazillion miles an hour. That was the great thing about being on the street. Is like the speed at which people are going, to watch someone stop and look up and just like come out of the rat race for a second. Like that in itself it's huge.
Because you create space. I started as a street performer many years ago.
Yeah.
And you create space with an audience that lasts for that 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then at the end, you sense this after everyone gets on clapping or connecting or smiling. It's like, oh yeah, we're here.
Back in reality.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's a brave thing to be a street performer.
It's
and you deal with a lot of the negative side of humanity too. That's like that's the fun part.
Yeah.
So what are you up to right now? What are some projects you're working on?
I'm about to write a book about actually a lot of this sort of stuff. I'm going to be in Australia until about April working on the book, and then I'm going to work on a piece of theater after that. I've missed the theater a lot.
Great.
So I'm going to go work with one of my favorite directors and make a piece from scratch. And I wish I could tell you more, but all I know is it's going to be up in the fall, and it'll be whatever it is.
Good for you. Congratulations. It has been an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you.
It's great to connect with you. And everybody check, can you give them your website, Amanda Palmer?
Yeah, it's just amandapalmer.net or Google.
Google me.
Yeah. Find me on Twitter.
A lot of people have found you on Twitter.
Yes, a lot of people have found me on Twitter.
Thank you, everyone. It was great. It was such an honor. Bye, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks.